Welcome to Musician Life Stories. Today I'm very honoured to have Collette Williams joining us on the show. Collette is a fantastic drummer and singer-songwriter from the UK. So Collette is currently working and touring with the brilliant band Blossoms, and has also played with successful artists such as Rews and the 86th Floor Music, amongst others. So Collette is endorsed by Natal Drums and Zildjian Cymbals. So it brings me great pride and joy to welcome Collette Williams. Hi Collette, how you doing? Thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey Tom, it's a pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
No problem. I'd like to maybe start at the beginning. So do you remember kind of how old what you were when you kind of first got into music and drums, and like did you have kind of much encouragement from family or friends, or was it kind of out of your own inspiration, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My family weren't really musical, to be honest. Both my mum and dad were completely tone deaf.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure where I got that musical gene from. But my nan used to take me to church at quite a young age, and she was quite a good singer, so perhaps it was from grandparents. But yeah, I was very young when I started singing. I was probably about 6. And as I said, that kind of started in church. And then when I first started playing drums, I just turned 14. And I think as I was getting sort of towards the teenage years, my dad used to play me a lot of rock music, especially when we were in the car. So I think my love of drums was kind of honed from listening to a lot of rock music.
Yeah, were there any particular bands, Collette, that your dad was playing you in the car? Any like famous bands, or was it just general stuff that you were listening to?
Yeah, he used to play The Clash, Sex Pistols, Rancid, all of those kind of rock bands. Grunge stuff like Nirvana. Absolutely loved Nirvana when I was little as well. So yeah, really good stuff. Yeah,
that's interesting. And so. I think when we spoke recently, you were telling me one of the kind of your early experiences. You were in like a church choir or something. Is that right? Or
yeah, I used to be in a choir at school from quite a young age, and then I started having singing lessons in a small group. So there was 3 of us, and we tended to work a lot on different harmonies, which taught me a little bit about the theory of music when I was quite young. So I started to kind of understand how to work with other musicians as well, which was a really good skill to acquire at that age.
Yeah, brilliant. So did you take drum kit lessons at all, and who were your kind of early teachers?
I did, yeah. So from the age of 14, when I started getting interested in the drums, I kind of ran home that night after having a music lesson at school with the drum kit and said, Dad, you know, I really want a drum kit. And he kind of rolled his eyes, because before that, you know, I'd wanted a violin, I'd wanted a guitar, and they were all quite short-lived. He did actually buy me a violin, and I think that lasted for about 6 months. So
he thought it was just a face,
yeah, he was a little bit apprehensive at first, and was like, well, we'll maybe get you some lessons, see how you get on, and if you stick to it, then we'll think about getting the drum kit. So I had weekly lessons at school, and my first teacher was a fantastic drummer called Andy Richards, who's based in Shropshire. He was also the leader of the big band at the time, and yeah, it was a great teacher. Really inspired me to kind of understand the technique side of drumming a bit more. And I joined the big band for a short while, and kind of got involved with drum kit and also timp playing as well, I think, as we discussed before. So that was really new to me. It was nice to be able to play on some different instruments that I'd never even really seen before. It was a really good experience for me, and a good opportunity for building a future career, really.
Yeah, and what would you say the difference is for any drummers that might be listening, that like between like drum kit and timpani or other percussion? Is there quite a big difference, or can you sort of notice similarities between the two?
Yeah, I guess at the core, you know, there's still rhythmic percussion, but I guess the other element of timp that you don't have so much with drum kit is the melodic aspect.
Yeah.
So it was very different for me, and I think more so the biggest kind of shock for me was the genre that they're more suited to, because you don't really get symphony and rock music. So so I hadn't really heard that much. I'd listened to a little bit of classical music, but when I was a teenager, it wasn't really my bag. So being able to play some tuned percussion was kind of a new experience for me. And yeah, I think if you've got the principles of drum kit, then you can definitely apply those skills, and they're transferable between instruments. Just takes a little bit more understanding of the genre and the concepts surrounding that.
Sure, yeah, of course. Oh, that's really interesting. So can you tell me who your kind of main drumming influences were, and maybe still are now, like I guess as you were growing up, kind of the drummers that you were listening to?
Yeah, absolutely. So so my first love was Travis Barker from Blink-182.
Nice.
They were one of my favorite bands growing up, so so it's kind of inevitable that Travis Barker would be a big influence.
Yeah.
One of my first drum kits was actually an Orange County replica of one of Travis Barker's. It was neon yellow with black stars. Absolutely ridiculous sizes that no one would ever be able to gig with in anything else than punk music. So I kind of shot myself in the foot there when I spent a huge amount of money on that, and then realised that I couldn't take it to function gigs. So so that was
guess we all go through those sort of phases, don't we?
Yeah, the experimental phase is when you realise that sizes and different specifications are there for a reason. And then I was quite inspired by Thomas Slang. His Creative Control DVD, just as I started going to the London Drum Show, and he would do kind of clinics and masterclasses and things. So I followed his career quite closely. And I think he was inspirational from a creative perspective, because he was doing things that really seemed to kind of push the boundaries of drumming. And he was definitely one of those drummers for me that I felt his level of playing was completely unobtainable for someone like me, but it was still inspiring because he was kind of like a superstar in drumming. So I really enjoyed watching him. And then Ash Sohn, I think, was kind of sort of worlds apart from Thomas Slang. Was very simple in his playing, but very effective, great pocket player, really inspiring just because of his groove and his feel, and that felt a lot more achievable for someone like me.
I think, because I think Thomas Slang is kind of, I guess, more into the kind of rudimental aspects of drums, but maybe Ash is more about the groove in the pocket. But I guess it just shows you can do well through going through either side of those kind of techniques, if that makes sense. But
yeah, absolutely, and I think that's really good to have quite wide inspirations, because as you say, it does inspire you and show you that if you practice hard and you're motivated and committed to something, you can do anything that you want to.
So as well as being a great drummer, you're a very talented singer-songwriter. So do you remember kind of how you got into singing? And I know you've done like backing vocals with certain bands. Was singing something you kind of enjoyed as a child as well, or did that come a bit later in your career?
Well, thank you. Firstly, you're too kind to me. I think singing was probably the first thing that I kind of went through when I was young. I guess it was my first method of musical communication as such, and being an only child, I remember I used to sit in my bedroom for hours on end with my little Casio keyboard and write a load of songs in C major and just change the chords, the same kind of chord structure, just flipped for every song. And I used to just sit there for hours and write these really silly, childish songs, and just really enjoy it as, just as an outlet, really. I'd write about things that were going on at school, things that I'd seen on the TV. I'd try and write songs like some of the bands that I loved. And it was just a really nice way to get into music. And I think that kind of established my passion for music, really, and my want to work with some other musicians, because there's only so much that you can sit in your bedroom by yourself, before you realise that you want to get out there and kind of jam and experience what it's like to be in a band.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Were there kind of any singers like in the charts, or just or generally vocalists that you really liked to listen to?
Yeah, I really loved Skin from Skunk Anansie. I thought
Oh
she
yeah,
was just incredible. Just the power in her voice and the passion that kind of communicated through in the songs was fantastic. And around about the time that I was kind of into rock music, there weren't that many female fronted bands or even artists out there with that kind of powerful rock projection.
sure.
So it was really nice to see some really strong voiced females. Another one was Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm.
Okay.
Subsequently, later down the line, I got to support her on tour, which was just an incredible opportunity.
Great.
So yeah, I really liked that strong, powerful kind of rock voice.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Yeah. So yeah, just I guess just to kind of fast forward a few years. So I guess when you left school, I think am I right in thinking you enrolled on the music course at Leeds University? Is that right?
I did.
And I think it was a world percussion and pop music. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
that's right. Yeah, quite an eclectic mix of popular music and then world percussion as well. So yeah, I mean, at that age, I didn't even realise that courses like that existed. So it was quite fascinating when I came across a curriculum like that and decided that that would be quite a good path for me to follow to become the best musician I could be, really.
Yeah. So what were the kind of highlights of your time at university, and in terms of the studying aspects, and also kind of making connections and meeting people and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was all one big highlight, really. It was definitely one of the best experiences of my life, and not necessarily for the academic side. I mean, I think there's there's a lot to be gained from studying a degree. I am a big advocate of continuing that academic journey in music, but also I think from the social side of it as well, because I learned so much from the people that I studied with. There was a lot of like-minded people, and there were a lot of people who had completely different views and experiences from me, which was wonderful because it meant that they were kind of bringing them into the rehearsal room, I was bringing my experience, and you can create this really good melting pot of new ideas and things that wouldn't usually kind of connect.
Yeah.
So I just tried to be in as many bands and as projects as I possibly could, spend my time doing. And the lecturers were really inspiring as well, because they all had their own backgrounds, their own experiences in the music industry, and they would kind of bring in their year's worth of experience to us, to kind of give us some insight of what our potential careers could be. So yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. We had some great clinics and masterclasses as part of the course as well in world music. So we often had Indian musicians playing sitar, tabla, African drumming classes, djembe. So yeah, it was really eye-opening and taught me a lot.
Yeah. Was oh, that's really good. Yeah. So I think, did you tell me you were in kind of, I think you might have been in some sort of like folk bands and stuff when you were at university, is that right?
Yeah, I was in a kind of like folk rock band, I say, which was really cool. It was completely out of my comfort zone because I hadn't really done much in folk before, and the singer was a very good songwriter. He had a real way with words, and he used to throw all these odd time signatures in everywhere that I had to try and keep up with.
Yeah.
And we used to play in all the local bars and have our friends come down, and yeah, it was just a really, really happy time.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. So were you there for, is it 3 years or 4 years to your course, or?
Yeah, it was 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No. Yeah. Nice. Okay. And I guess because I know when I left college, it can be a little kind of intimidating going out into the big wide world, because you sort of have the safety net of music college and stuff. So did you find it was a little bit of a transition, kind of going into becoming a professional, or was it quite easy to kind of get to those next steps, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, especially for those that are maybe considering studying music. I mean, things have changed a lot since I went to university.
Yeah.
when I was kind of choosing the course that was going to be right for me, there wasn't so much in the way of music industry courses. Since then, places like BIM, ACM, ICMP have really developed with the curriculum that they're teaching now. It's really applicable to the current music industry. Back then, it was more so studying music itself, and then you were kind of left alone a little bit to forge your own pathway after that. So in all honesty, I did find it quite hard using what I'd learned and trying to find a job in the music industry, because it's not very well signposted. It's not like, I don't know, maybe wanting to go into F1 and work on a race car. There's a specific kind of pathway, the companies that work on things like that. Whereas music, you come out of university not even really knowing exactly what you want to do or where, and then to try and find your way there is actually quite hard. So I think it's really important that there's courses that are really industry focused now, and I think it's really important that those who have found their way into the industry kind of give advice to maybe younger musicians starting out, because it is really imperative to get that knowledge.
Yeah, and because I had a similar experience. I think without wanting to kind of sound critical, I think maybe the college I studied at, and maybe with you as well, that maybe there could have been slightly more follow-up when the students graduate, of like kind of supporting them through the couple of years after they leave, and might through whatever the means necessary. But I guess in terms of like, how do you think colleges like the ones you just mentioned, how do you think they're doing a better job at kind of helping students to kind of grow in their careers and not just kind of get a good grade, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a hugely important element of the money that you pay to study, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think how they are supporting their students and their alumni is by creating some kind of department that kind of bridges the gap between studying and the industry. So I think what they're trying to do is get work placements, opportunities for the students whilst they study, so that they can really get the experience of what it's like to work in the industry. What I mean by that is places like BIM have partnerships with festivals like the Great Escape, Boardmasters down in Cornwall, and they get placements for the students to go and work on stages, so as stage crew, as management, as artist liaison, that kind of thing, so they can start to work with bands at high levels and understand what a day in the life kind of looks like. And after that, perhaps then they've already made a few connections. They know the different kind of companies and entities that work in putting a festival together, and it just gives them some insight and a few connections to then tap into once they finish their studies. And I think that part of the whole opportunity is maybe even more important than the qualification itself. I know that's probably a little bit taboo to say, but I really do think that kind of aftercare is really important.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's also maybe a little bit down to the student to kind of think, be a little bit proactive about what they want to do when they leave college, because I think it's you kind of need to have a long-term plan. I think, I'm sure you'd agree, but do you think do you think that that music students should think, oh, maybe I want to be a performer, or I want to work in production, and maybe kind of have that in mind when they're at college, so that they're not kind of panicking when they're not sure what to do when they leave? Or
yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to have even a kind of rough idea of where you want to aim for, because then the practitioners and the lecturers can help guide you to that point. But equally, I think it's fine as well if you get to uni not really knowing exactly what you want to do, because the whole process is there to really refine your ideas and understanding. And I think, much like me, I went to uni with a really clear idea that, I wanted to be a session musician at the end of it. And sometimes the experience can change your views on what you want to do, because you have to kind of make that assumption based on what you see in the media, what you see your idols doing. And a lot of that is kind of Hollywood fabricated in a way. So it's really, once you get to the bare bones of it and meeting people that actually do those jobs, that you really understand what it's like to do that job. And a lot of the time that can actually change your mind and your direction, which is not a bad thing at all. That is why, you know, people like me are there to try and guide you with that and give you our experience.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think at that stage you really do need to be quite self-motivated and proactive. I think there's quite a big jump between schools and colleges in the UK and universities, because, you know, at school you're really guided, you're motivated by your teachers, you're kind of given that kick up the bum, whereas at university all of the training wheels kind of fall off and you're on your own. You have to kind of get yourself up in the morning, you have to do that extra research. Your tutors and your lecturers are really there just as a prompt to kind of highlight the areas that you should be exploring.
Yeah. So as you just touched on, Collette, I think you're currently working at, is it the the Birmingham BIM, is that right? Or
Yes, yeah.
Could you kind of explain that sort of your role there and kind of how, I guess, sort of how you're trying to help the students? And
sure, yeah. So it started off in a kind of events position, and really being the person that kind of sourced them industry opportunities. So I was kind of an industry liaison officer as such, and it's my job to kind of share connections and industry networks with the students, allow them to build relationships and explore the local scene and the wider scene, and again help them transition from doing their studies, leaving and going into the music industry. So it was a pleasure to kind of help set up those opportunities, and see them really thrive once they went into the industry. And I'm just about to embark on a new role there, teaching on the music business course. So again, just sharing all of my industry experience and trying to give them an overview of, you know, the kind of ecosystem of the music industry and how everything interconnects, all the different roles you can go into, what the duties involved with those roles are, and just a wider understanding of you know, this huge kind of system that we only ever really see on TV.
That sounds great. When you left Leeds University, do you remember kind of did you kind of audition for any bands, or did you were you sort of going to jam nights and things like that, or were there other kind of avenues that you were exploring?
Yeah, I kind of did a bit of both, really. I was quite shy. Well, still am, really. You know, I was quite introverted as far as musicians go, which is quite strange, because people think, well, you're up on the stage, you must be really confident, but not necessarily. So as someone who was quite shy, you know, I'd go to jam sessions with friends and I'd kind of sit and observe everything, and a lot of the time I'd watch the other players and try and learn and absorb different technique and confidence from them. So that was really quite eye-opening for me, and a chance to sort of meet people, introduce myself, see what kind of opportunities were out there. At the same time, whilst I was in London, I was doing auditions with different record labels, different management companies, artists, bands, you know, different things that were going on, really. Sorry, go on.
And I was just going to say, was there, how did you find doing auditions? Was it something you had to kind of get used to, or was it, did you find it quite relaxing, or?
No, I used to be really scared by the audition process. I still am, to be honest. It's quite unnerving for anyone, because it feels like an exam. You know, you are there to impress and show your skills. So I think it's quite a daunting process. And again, it's something that I wish there was more information available for young musicians. And I you know, definitely want to be someone who can kind of give my experience, because I think it helps quash the fear of the unknown, because a lot of people don't really know what to expect from an audition process. They don't know what people are looking for from them. They don't always know how to conduct themselves. You know, you have to be a musician primarily, but you also have to be a generally nice person that people want to work with, because if you go in there and you know, maybe you're a tad too egotistical or too overconfident, then equally you can ruin your chances as much as being underconfident. So yeah, I think it's a process that you have to just do over and over again, and with that you learn a lot, you can refine your performance, and slowly but surely, you know, your confidence grows with that, and you lose some of the anxiety surrounding it. But yeah, it is a scary experience.
Yeah, yeah, because I think the people that I've spoken to that have done well in auditions and got the gig is that I think normally um, they've been quite relaxed, and I guess that it's easier said than done. But I guess the more relaxed you can be and easygoing, and as well as like getting your playing together, I guess that helps, doesn't it? But
yeah, absolutely. And I think that the best thing that leads to being relaxed is putting the time in
yeah,
beforehand, doing as much research as you possibly
yeah,
can. A lot of the time, you don't get a lot of information for auditions. Record labels, artist managers are terrible for last minute
okay,
communications. You're lucky if you get an email the night before you're due to go in, and
okay,
it might say, here's the place, this is what you need to bring, and here's the track, and you've had it like 10 hours before you're due to
yeah,
perform. So I think as a musician, you really need to build your resilience. You need to be able to adapt and overcome, and you really need to be able to put the practice in. If they send you a track to learn, make sure you learn it. Make sure you learn it creatively. Maybe put some extra fills in. Learn it parrot fashion, exactly as they tell you to as well. Maybe in a different style, at a different tempo. You need to be prepared for them to throw anything at you in the audition. So the more confident you are with the material, the more malleable you'll be if they kind of throw last minute things at you.
yeah, and if you don't mind me adding as well, I think just also kind of knowing your gear, kind of so. Um, Kind of, I guess, as drummers, if we're playing some kind of like a very acoustic kind of laid back thing, maybe some brushes or something, just kind of little things like that, I guess, as well.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? An artist is only as good as their tools. So
Yeah,
knowing your way around the kit. I mean, a lot of the time when you're doing an audition, you'll kind of, there'll be an in-house kit. So having some experience, trying different things,
yeah,
troubleshooting as well. The main thing is if something goes wrong, being able to be nice and relaxed and deal with that scenario. So the
yeah.
more you practice that, the more experience you've had, the better you'll be in that scenario.
All right, thanks. That's great advice. So I think I think my listeners will be interested to know the first time I kind of I saw you was at the Excel Centre. Where you did a fantastic set with a duo called Rews, who you were in at the time, and you also did a great drum clinic. But if you don't mind, just with the band Rews, where you were in, so could you sort of tell us what it was like playing with that duo, and what were some of the highlights of playing in that band for 2 or 3 years or however long it was?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a fantastic time. I think being in a duo, you have to have a lot of skills that can kind of
Yeah,
fill out that experience. And what I mean by that is a lot of people are used to watching bands with 4 or 5 members in, and you kind
yeah,
of have to be 2 or 3 people in one person. So I played drums and I sang
okay,
and triggered stuff, and there was a lot going on at any one time, but it was all really, really great skills that I got to experience. And it was great working with my partner at the time in the band. And we had some fantastic times. We played Glastonbury Festival, which was definitely one of
nice.
our big highlights. We got to go to China, America, Europe, lots of different places, and play many festivals. Some summers we were doing up to like 30 festivals a summer.
Oh, wow, yeah,
Spring tour and autumn tour. Then we'd write stuff. We released an album together. So yeah, it was a fantastic time. I really enjoyed my time in the band. And I got a lot out of it, a lot of enjoyment.
yeah. And just when you played at Glastonbury on the John Peel stage, I think it was. What was it like? Because I think you were playing in front of like about 5,000 people. Was that it must have been great to played at such an iconic music festival like Glastonbury.
Absolutely, it was just a dream come true for both of us, really. I think that's the most nervous I've been playing
Yeah,
a festival ever. Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. I had this one moment that I remember when in our first song I started playing, and then I looked up to the audience and I couldn't believe how full the tent was. It was literally spilling over. There were people outside still. And I was so overwhelmed that I forgot to play. I just kind of froze for a second and looked around, and then was like, "Oh, I'm meant to be playing." So
you're not dreaming,
yeah, I'm awake, I'm actually here, I should probably do some work. So it was just really overwhelming, but in a fantastic kind of way, and the whole experience was just brilliant. So that's definitely one on my bucket list of life, kind of ticked off.
And were there any other bands that you saw when you were at Glastonbury that like just when you were sort of chilling out that you really enjoyed watching? Or
so the first year we played, I actually saw Blossoms.
Okay, who you'll talk about in a second. And
it was just like, wow, these guys are fantastic. So that was kind of my first time seeing them live. That was really good. Also Biffy Clyro, I saw them on the main stage, and they were absolutely fantastic. But my absolute highlight was Foo Fighters. And it's become a little bit of a thing actually. Every year on that date, my partner and I, we try to go and see Foo Fighters wherever they are in the world if they're playing a show. Unfortunately, this is actually the first year that we haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, that's a shame.
So weekend at Glastonbury, we took the TV into the garden and we sat on the grass and pretended we were there. So that was nice.
Cool. Great. So as you just referred to, so you saw Blossoms that summer, but you're actually playing percussion now with the great band Blossoms. So could you sort of tell me and my audience kind of how you got the opportunity to play with them, and what's it like to play with those guys in that band?
So it came about in a bit of a roundabout way, really. So a few years ago, I kind of added another skill to my bow, and I went into drum teching.
Nice.
It's been something that I'd been thinking about for a few years, because in Rews I was basically my own drum tech, so I had to learn a lot about the equipment, a lot about the audio side, how the bigger picture kind of worked, with front of house monitors, that kind of thing, and all the electronics. So I decided that I wanted to kind of understand a bit more about that on a bigger scale. So my first kind of proper role as a drum tech was with a Scandinavian band called Rews. So I went on tour with them. We supported an American band called Thrice and did like a bit of a co-headline tour.
Sure.
All around Europe, and then later I worked with them in Scandinavia. So that was a really good learning curve. I learned a lot from that. And then I started working with Blossoms, so I was drum tech for a while. Again, fantastic opportunity. We did a lot of big festivals and shows. And the lads are just so lovely. They're really down to earth, all hugely talented musicians in their own right. And it was just a pleasure to work with them. And, we had a lot of discussions about what I did, the fact that I was a musician, that I was in a duo at the time. And then an opportunity came up where they wanted to expand their live show. They wanted to have, a backing vocalist, more percussion, take some of the stuff off track and make it a live experience. So I was fortunate enough that they asked me if I would be that person. And I kind of jumped for joy and bit their hand off and couldn't say yes quick enough, really. So that's how that kind of came around.
Nice. And there's some great footage of you playing a gig at the Plaza Theatre in Stockport, I think.
Yes.
On YouTube. So I'll put that in the show notes for any viewers that want to check it out. But I think there's one song where you do quite a cool percussion intro. I can't remember the song. Is that right? But
yeah, I think it's The Keeper that you're talking about, which is like a bongo intro, which is nice. So that's my equivalent of a bongo solo, basically.
And is it when you sort of go on a tour with Blossoms, do you have quite a long extensive rehearsal period, or is it just like a couple of days in the studio? Or
yeah, we before we headed out in March this year, we had a week of rehearsals, because it's quite a big production now. So we also had a choir with us, because on Blossom's latest album they'd kind of branched out and really expanded all of the kind of sonics on it. So we had a choir for a few of the bigger shows. Unfortunately, some of the bigger shows had actually been postponed, like Manchester Arena. So we're still hoping that next year we'll be able to get back on and do those, which we're all looking forward to. But yeah, it's quite extensive rehearsals. The percussion rig itself takes a long time to build as well. It's just like this huge percussion spaceship.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of factor all of the time into that. And, you know, just as you do in rehearsals, going through a lot of things time and time again to really kind of nail them. But it's all really fun. You know, there's lots of snacks involved, lots of laughs, and just a really good time.
Yeah. So without sort of getting too technical, do you kind of write out charts for the percussion, or does the band give you kind of instructions for what they kind of want to do with each song? Or
the band gives us a little bit of artistic license. I mean, the main objective is to try and reproduce the percussion as closely to the as we can, really. But for that first tour, I did actually do my own charts. Me and the other percussionist kind of did notate our parts, because there was so many songs to remember and so many different bits of percussion. We were triggering things as well on SPDs. We were doing kind of percussion, different kind of effects and swells with you know, effect symbols. So yeah, there was just so much going on, and a lot of really important parts that we were kind of responsible for starting tracks. So yeah, I did actually have charts for the first few shows, and just like with anything, the more you do it, you know, the more it kind of goes into your brain. So we kind of came off the charts midway through the tour, and it's great then, because you can really look up and just be part of the ambience and the vibe, and there is a lot of that when you're on stage with Blossoms.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I think I know we spoke about this a bit when we last spoke, but could you like tell my audience a bit about I guess like a typical day in the life of a tour, either with Blossoms or any band, just because I think some people that aren't musicians might kind of be interested in kind of how it all works and stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess it depends if your act is headlining or supporting.
Sure.
Slightly. But if you're on a tour bus, then you usually wake up anytime around like 9:30.
Okay.
Load in at 10 o'clock. Now it's slightly different, because as well as playing, I tech as well, so I'm kind of part of the road crew as well as being a musician. Now many musicians might have their own tech, so they wouldn't have to do that part, but personally I get up for loading, help load all the backline in about 10 a.m. in the morning. We get all of that into the venue, get the stage set up with things like risers first, build all the in-house kind of equipment, and then I would set the drum kit up. I'd get that in place, make sure that that's all to the drummer's specification if that isn't me, and then I'd work on getting the percussion rig up. So again, takes quite a long time, because there's so many different bits to kind of put on the rig. Once we've done that, we would then do a sound check, maybe just before lunch, kind of run through a few songs with the full band, so front of house can get levels and everything, get monitor levels. Then we'd all go off for some food and have a bit of an afternoon to ourselves. So if you're in a different city, or you know, maybe you get a little bit of time to go and explore that place, have a little look around, sample the food, be a tourist for the day. Then you come back maybe 6 or 7 o'clock after dinner, get ready for the show, get any stage clothes on that you need to do, any hair, makeup, that kind of thing. Watch the support band if you're the main act. It's always nice to do that and kind of support your fellow musicians. You really appreciate that, especially if you're kind of moving up through the ranks. Everyone kind of says that, you know, that's a really nice thing to do, and when you are the support band, it's so lovely for the main act to come on. So you'd watch that, take a few photos, and then it would be your time to be on stage. So you do your performance, and then maybe come off stage around 10:30, have a little bit of time to decompress, talk about the performance with the band, you know, see some friends and things like that, and then start pack down about 11 o'clock. If you're lucky, you might be done by midnight, maybe 1 a.m, back on the bus, have a few drinks with the crew, with the band, again, talk about the show, and then go to bed. So it's all a bit of a whirlwind, really.
Yeah, a bit. I bet you're pretty shattered at the end, a bit quite tired at the end of it, but a long day, yeah.
Yeah. You kind of running on adrenaline by that point. So you have very weird kind of patterns. You know, if you're at home, you might go to bed at like 11 o'clock and get up at 8 or 9. It kind of flips on its head when you're on tour. So you do get into this strange universe where you're kind of going to bed as people are getting up, and you know, that kind of thing. But it's good fun.
Yeah, I guess you can have sort of recovery time when you get home from the tour. So
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, great. I've asked a couple of other of my guests this, but like obviously can be a little bit of a mate's game, the music industry. So do you think it's harder if you're like, say, maybe an introvert, or you're not such an outgoing person in the music industry, or do you think it's still possible to kind of network with people? Well, not necessarily network, but kind of build relationships, or do you think people that are more kind of outgoing might have a little bit of an advantage, if that sort of makes sense? But
yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I don't think it kind of prohibits you in any way if you
okay.
are quite introverted. I think the main thing that matters is if you're a nice person and if you work hard, because those are the things that people are going to remember, and those are going to be the kind of attributes that people are going to call you up on. So, you know, if you do an audition and maybe you don't even get, you know, the role, but you've conducted yourself really well, you were polite, you got on well with the other musicians, you know, you said thank you, you were on time, you were prepared, then that's really going to stick in the mind of someone. Equally, if you're rude, if you're arrogant, if you're late, those things are
Yeah.
definitely in the mind and you will not be called back, you know.
No, of course, yeah.
It's definitely an industry that works on good credit, and I think if you conduct yourself well, it doesn't matter so much if you're not outgoing, because it will stick in someone's mind that you're a nice person to work with. So I wouldn't really let that be something that kind of puts you off or
Yeah.
worries you. You know, you might have to work a little bit harder to kind of get heard if you're in a room full of people with bigger voices, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be remembered.
Oh yeah, no, thanks for that. I have a question now about kind of I guess sort of female musicians and drummers in the industry. So do you think there are enough kind of girls learning to play the drums, and if not, how do you think society maybe can encourage females to learn the instrument, or like another instrument like the bass or something, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's definitely on the up, but it's going at a much slower pace than I think we would all like it to be. Um, I think that the main thing is seeing female role models and having those inspirations, because when I was growing up, there really weren't many female drummers, and there definitely weren't any kind of female British drummers either. You know, any that were out there were usually American.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think being able to see that and having that in your line of sight and available as an inspiration is a really useful thing. And I think just the encouragement and maybe just this change in expectation and tone of general society, because you know, once upon a time women were supposed to be seen and not heard, and being a female drummer or guitarist kind of completely goes against that sort of patriarchal idea. And I think we're kind of smashing through that as the years go by, but I think women should be encouraged to be creative, to express themselves however they want to, especially musically.
Yeah.
And you know, all this kind of stigma of, you know, oh, drums are a masculine thing or only boys play guitar and all of that is just really old now. You know, it's outdated. It's been proven otherwise. There are some fantastic female musicians out there that deserve more airtime, really. And I hope that as the years go on, you know, that's only going to kind of amplify and increase. So fingers crossed that there's a lot of positive things to look forward to with, you know, new emerging female talent.
Yeah, and there are some great female drummers now in this country, like yourself and others. But I think you were mentioning to me last week, so I couldn't remember the name. There's quite a talented young female drummer coming through the ranks. Is that right? Or
Nandi, yeah,
yeah,
she's everywhere at the moment, and it's just really lovely to see. I think she's quite young, maybe about 10, 11.
okay,
And her latest activity is actually she just involved herself in a drum battle with Dave Grohl on social
yeah,
media, which is just really entertaining to watch and really sweet as well, because Dave Grohl's just written a song especially for her,
okay, nice,
kind of retaliated, but it's in
yeah.
this really friendly, supportive way, and it's just really inspiring to see and really puts a smile on your face, especially when people like Dave Grohl kind of get involved. So yeah, it's really lovely to see that.
Okay, yeah, that's she's got a lot of competition with him.
Yeah, yeah, she's definitely got a work cut out for her there.
Yeah. So thanks very much for your time. I've just got one more question. This is kind of more of a light-hearted question. If you could have like a jamming session with any kind of bass player or guitarist in the world, who would you have a jam session with? If is there anyone past or present you'd love to kind of spend a couple of hours in a rehearsal room with?
Wow, that's a good question.
It doesn't. It could be any musician actually, but just to kind of have a little jam with or whatever. Yeah.
I think, funnily enough, just talking about Dave Grohl, I think he would be someone that I would absolutely love to have a jam with. That would be like an absolute dream come true.
Yeah, he'd be a lot of fun, wouldn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he would. He'd keep you on your toes for sure.
Yeah.
I think as far as rhythm section, I think Pino Palladino would be great as well to really get that kind of going. I think that would be a fantastic kind of rhythmic opportunity there as well. So yeah.
Yeah, he's a great player, isn't he? Yeah. So thanks so much for your time, Claire. I really appreciate it. So if any one of my listeners wants to contact you, what's the best way to find you on the internet?
Probably Instagram. You can find me at Amber Sky Drums.
Okay. Yeah.
Give me a message.
Yeah, I'll put that in the link. Yeah. I'll put that in the link below. Thanks. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed our chat today, and it's been a lot of fun. Thanks.
Me too. It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
No.